Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about lists of chocolate curated for gifting. And this is a follow-up on the previous episode's look at Advent calendars, so a week ago today. Before we get into today's episode, I would like to point out that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. If you're not currently a member, you can go click on the join button in the top navigation. And since 2008, there's always been a free membership level. But if you have the resources, especially during this holiday season, there are premium membership levels as little as $5 a month or $42 a year. And the higher levels also include consulting hours. So you can have an opportunity to come and speak with me directly and answer questions about chocolate, cocoa, whatever it is that you'd like to help and grow your business. I'd also like to point out that no matter where you are in the world you're connecting to, go into the live chat in YouTube or the comments in LinkedIn or Facebook and let me know where in the world that you're connecting from. I'll get the shout out, up on screen. And if what you'd like to do is you'd like to make a comment or a question about whatever it is that I'm speaking about today, you can get that question or comment. I'll put it up on screen and I will respond to it and answer your question to the best I am capable of during the course of the episode. And with that, let's go take I hope that I am still live. I am still live. Sorry about that. Had an interesting technical challenge. So I hope that I didn't lose anybody in the course of doing that. So let's go back. This is the post for today's episode of Pod Save Chocolate. I do a post for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate. Here's the post for today, and let's go run into what it is that I'm talking about. So I mentioned that the last episode 167, was taking a look at Advent calendars and how Advent calendars are marketed and a little bit of history of the Advent calendar and chocolate in Advent calendars, just to get some background on what's going on when it comes to Advent calendars. And so I wanted to point out that today's episode is a follow-up on that. Right. So I've really, after going through Advent calendars, I said, right, what are the other ways that we might learn about chocolate for gifting? And unlike the previous episode on Advent calendars, what I'm not going to be talking about is, specifics of individual boxes when it comes to curated lists. What I want to be talking about is the way that these lists are selected and what you can learn from the different outlets and how that might help you make future purchases. This is not a review of the boxes. I didn't do a tasting of any of them. Right? So that's not what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about some curated lists. And all of these lists were published in 2025. I asked a search engine a specific question, which is, find me chocolate gifting options for holiday gifting. Find me chocolate holiday gifting options. And there were 3 which came to the top of the search results, and I'm focusing on 3 of those. The first one of those is from the New York Times, Wirecutter. And it's a list of the best box chocolates. And it was updated in January of 2025. So the lists are either published or updated in 2025. And what I want to go is, first thing I do when I go look at a curated list like this is I go down to the bottom of the page and I find out who the people were who contributed to the guide. So in this particular case, we had Gabriella Gershenson, who edits guides that help improve things in the kitchen. She's also the author of Wirecutter's Guides to Gift Baskets and Box Chocolates. So you get some idea of what her background is. Leslie Stockton and Haley Sprangel. So we know what their backgrounds are, where they're likely coming from, what their expertise is that contributes to their being a contributor to this article. So I think it's always important when you're doing this to understand, okay, who are the people who are involved in putting together these articles? And it always makes sense to go and take a look and read through the introduction. Chocolate preferences are subjectives, yeah. So while one person may prefer classic American style convections, somebody may crave deep dark ganaches, Wonka-worthy flavor bombs, right? So over the years, this is a list that has evolved. So they pick a number one. This would be our number one recommendation for this, but they also have collections of flavor forward samplers, chocolates that evoke composed desserts, single origin truffles, vegan collections, and nut-free assortment. And you can jump to these in different parts of the article. So what I like about what the New York Times has done, right, is the purpose, I believe, of a curated selection like this is to help you make decisions about what to purchase. And these are not organized by price, right? Although prices are given. What we want from the editors and the contributors to these articles is to give us a rubric, a framework under which the items on their list are evaluated, right? And in a way that helps us understand how we might think about picking a particular collection and gifting it to someone. And that's what I think is really important. How are the editors and contributors to this, right, going to be helping us make the gifting decision? And that's where I want to focus on today's review. So their top their top pick is Wirecutter Confections Black Box, Michael Wirecutter. I mean, I like Michael. I've known him for a long time. He does exquisite work. He's based in San Francisco. And one of the great things about this particular rubric from Wirecutter is they say who these are for. So who this box is for. So this box is for adventurous chocolate lovers and traditionalists alike, those who will appreciate riffs on a classic chocolate selection. Right? And so, boom, according to the editors, this is the kind of recipient that would appreciate this box. And we'll look at a couple of who they are for over a couple of different entries. Why they're great. They offer a full sensory experience, which is part of the reason for giving box chocolates in the first place. Every piece is memorable. Cool, right? Who they're for, why they're great, right? And then flaws but not deal breakers. There's a tendency in many of these kinds of reviews to focus on the positive aspects of it. Why would I cover the negative aspects if I'm recommending this box, right? And they're pointing out some things that the editors of this list said, there are things that we think could be better in one way or another, but they're not deal breakers in this particular case. This is more of a caveat than a flaw, but a few of the chocolates in the box come in pretty esoteric flavor combinations that may be a little out there for some, right? So is that a flaw? I don't particularly think that it's a flaw, but if these are for adventurous chocolate lovers and traditionalists alike, what you may want to consider is whether the recipient is more on the adventurous side or more on the traditionalist side. If they're more on the adventurous side, then these esoteric out there flavors, tarragon grapefruit, star anise pink peppercorn, right, could be really, really interesting, a choice for a particular recipient. But you've got the most important aspects of, here is who the likely recipient might be and what it is that they're going to be attracted to in the box. Very, very nice. So we then have an American classic, a company called Valerie Confections. This is in Los Angeles. Their Baby Grand assortment. And they have this classic chocolates with a twist. Who are they for? A sweets enthusiast who relishes the toasty, buttery goodness of an excellent toffee or a runny caramel. So if you've got somebody who's a real toffee fan, a real caramel fan, this might be a great option for you. However, if you've got somebody who really loves adventurous flavors, maybe this collection is not the one for you. Why they're great? Um, they are a masterclass in simplicity. They appear straightforward, a palette of bittersweet chocolate coatings. All right, they appear straightforward. Right, interesting. But they actually don't complete the sentence. So I'm reading this and I'm going, huh, all right. Um, this M dash here suggests there should be another M dash here, which contributes to just so compared with some of the psychedelically swirled chocolates, we like those from Melissa Koppel or Stick With Me Sweets. These seem restrained and their presentation leaves little to hide behind. So it seems like elegant, classic, but somebody who is not necessarily very adventurous. Flaws, but not deal breakers. There's no legend to indicate the filling, and the information isn't listed online. So this is very much is life is like a box of chocolates. You're never going to go what you get. You're going to go and have to figure out if you're going to how to determine what the flavors are, and you can't until you bite in them. So bite into them, and that could be a challenge for many people, and that's something other lists address explicitly. So vivid flavors in a shiny package. Stick With Me Sweets. I mean, Susanna Yoon. This is one of my favorite bonbon places in New York City. I love her work and have loved it since they opened. There are two different selections, one of which is vegan, the other is not. Who are these for? People who appreciate fully realized flavors and glossy exteriors. So people who like, um, who like who are um, respond to we eat with our eyes first, right? These are really elegant, really beautiful. The technique, right, is pretty much perfect on these things. The flavorings are really quite wonderful. They talk about the calamansi meringue pie, which I've had. It has 3 distinct layers: meringue, curd, and crust. I mean, it gives you some wonderful textures, like an entire it's like an entirely lemon meringue or lime meringue pie in a little bonbon. The packaging is interesting, and that's what some of the reviewers have said is a deal breaker, as a flaw. But some people didn't like the whimsy of the way the book looks. It didn't seem to be matching the chocolates themselves. Is it a flaw? Is it a deal breaker? The answer is I don't think it's a flaw. I think it's cute. I think anybody who gets these things would respond to the whimsy of them. Now, what's also interesting is that they mentioned this company, Amore de Mona, the assorted mignardises. You know, I know Mona Shangaris, who's the founder of this. I've had their mignardises. It's also interesting is that this Amore de Mona mignardise is not on their list of recommendations, but they do refer to it, which is interesting because so far all of the all of the references have been internal to the list, right? But again, we go to Ragged Coast. This is a company in Maine, in Portland, Maine. But the top pick is this, and who they're for: a chocolate lover who appreciates quality ingredients, mindful sourcing, and a well-rounded assortment. I mean, for me, with this, who these are for, why they're great, and flaws but not deal breakers, right, really do speak to the nature of the gifting process. Many years ago, I wrote an article for Yahoo Personals, and the Yahoo Personals, the focus of this article for Yahoo Personals was how to purchase chocolate for people. And I described we have 2 different audiences: somebody that you know and somebody that you don't know, right? So if I'm buying chocolate for somebody that I know, what I want to do is my choice of gift should reflect what it is that I know about the person I'm gifting to. So that, for example, if I know that they are an adventurous eater, then I might want to buy a collection or some chocolates which reflect really adventurous, excuse me, flavor combinations. If I know that they're not an adventurous eater, buying them out there flavorings might not be something that would appeal to them. The other thing to consider about that is, how do you go about buying something for somebody you don't know well, right? And this is not something that's addressed in any of these curated lists. But if you want to buy something for someone you don't know well, I think the best way to do that is to buy something that reflects a story you can tell about yourself. So, for example, you might walk into a store or select a box, however you're doing this, and you might go, I wanted to share with you this story. I bought these for you because they reflect some story in my life. So, for example, I might say, I bought these because in my childhood, every Christmas, we gave my mother a box of Victoria English toffee, right? And these reminded me, when I saw them, these reminded me of that gifting experience I had with my family. And we'd all sit around, right? And it would be shared around with everybody. And then I used to go and fight with my sisters. This is a true story. I used to go and fight with my sisters about who'd get the almonds that fell off the chocolate shablon around the toffee. So there's a box. There's all these. It was this wonderful memory of childhood. And I think that you as you make these choices, consider the reason you're gifting and who you're gifting for, what you do or you don't know about them, and either give them something that shows you've been paying attention and you understand who they are, or you're telling a story about yourself. And one of the things that I love, one of the things that I love, one of the things that I really appreciate about the way the New York Times Wirecutter has organized their responses is that first and foremost, they're telling you their opinion of who this box might appeal to, right? And then they give you a bunch of different options. And I think also importantly, you've got Melissa Koppel, just did great work. She's in Las Vegas. I've known Melissa, probably for 15 years or so. But within um, the entire selection, everything that you might find on the Melissa Koppel website, they have top picks, two of them, right? So one is a non-vegan, and the other one is a vegan collection, right? And so again, you've got this who they're for, why they're great, and perhaps some reasons, flaws, but not deal breakers. And this is the way they go through every single time. Every single one of these recommendations has these three components, right? And number one, because they're highlighted, it makes it really easy to go back and forth and to see what it is that you like and to go, oh, quickly, this is not for me, this is not for me, this is not for me. And these are all very, very different. Although one of the things that's interesting about all of these three lists is to find out which lists are on, which brands are on two or three lists, right? And you'll also get a very, very different understanding about who the audience is. So the New York Times, right, is generally appealing to a pretty upscale audience with the brands that they're representing. They're with Stick With Me Sweets and Chocolat Moderne and other companies. There is a New York focus. San Francisco is represented by Recuti and Dandelion. There's Las Vegas. I mean, this is a good representation of high-end makers from around the United States, as well as some imported brands. Richard from Paris, La Maison de Chocolat from Paris. One thing to know about the La Maison de Chocolat products you're going to be buying in the United States is chances are they have been frozen, right? If all of the production, I believe all of the production for all of these are done in France, they are shipped frozen, which means they're not strictly fresh. But that's true of many brands, not just La Maison de Chocolat. And it might be one reason to choose a smaller brand, a small company like Ragged Coast, like Chocolat Moderne, like Stick With Me Sweets, a small brand, Recuti in the United States, somebody that's local to you, rather than necessarily going with products that are produced overseas, which may or may not be frozen. I'm not saying they all are, but many of them are. And La Maison de Chocolat is owned by Valrhona, which is owned by Group Savencia, which is a multinational food, primarily dairy company. And so, do you really want your money to go and support these large companies? Would you like your money to go and support a local provider? Which is something that's actually not discussed about on these lists. Um, who the ownership is and where the ownership goes is not necessarily something everybody wants to go, but not where everybody wants to go. And so um, think about the way the lists you're using represent the products that they're recommended. So this is the Best Box chocolate. Again, it was they've been doing this for 11 years, and this is the curated list for 2025. And it's a good list, right? If you're thinking about gifting, not just for the Christmas holiday, but for any holiday. So next, let's go to Bon Appetit. So Bon Appetit, let's go to the bottom of the page. We can find out, right, who Kate Casson is, who's the writer. Now, it apparently, this list was curated by a single person as opposed to a group of people. I don't know that that's the case. We know that she's the writer. There's no indication about whether she has help in doing this. And what happens is that she doesn't appear to have a huge amount of experience in chocolate. So let's go and find out how. All right, how Kate talks about the best chocolate gifts for anyone. All right. So she describes her experience as, I've eaten enough chocolate in my lifetime that I feel overqualified to write this guide. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I want a food writer who sort of doesn't downplay, right, her specific expertise. You've eaten enough chocolate, but I want somebody who's tasted chocolate and really thought very hard about the chocolate that they're tasting. And I'm not convinced by what it is she said. So she's got the best chocolate gifts, right? A company called Spring and Mulberry, Compartes, and Valerie Confections, but they're specific, their Hanukkah assortment. This is interesting. Let's go take a look. This was published November 5th, 2025. Of the three lists we're going to be talking about, this is the only one that was published for the 2025 end of year holiday gifting season. So what you're going to do, the Valerie Confections Hanukkah assortments. So Valerie Confections was also on the New York Times Wirecutter list. And one of the things that you get here is you don't have this consistent rubric about how they're going to do this. I especially love their Hanukkah assortment, which comes with menorah truffles, liquid caramels, champagne truffles, and gilded truffles. We don't know anything about the flavors that might be approached to any of these things. And so there's not enough information for me here to know about what is in this box, right? So Skiko Confections, Skeko, I've not heard of them before, but they're San Francisco based. And I'm confused. If you take a look at this, there's a quote here, right? And I wonder who she's quoting, because in this, she gives her explanation. She gives her explanation of things, but she's not quoting anywhere. And I wonder, is she quoting herself here? Or what is she's doing is she's quoting copy from the website, or other kind of marketing materials, right? Or is she says her colleague Alana Shu, right? Is she actually quoting Alana Shu, right? And so this is not her review. And so there's some confusion here. Again, I don't know anything about the flavors here. And so I don't know, is this an adventurous flavor? Is it a classic traditional flavor connection? We do have passion fruit, yuzu, and burnt caramel. We do have some ideas that this might go and who they're for, right? But there's not this consistent rubric that I can go through and say, oh, so it's much, much harder work for me in order to do it. So Compartes, another LA-based company, a chocolate gift for every person in your life, holiday gift bars set, right? We talked about their advent calendar in the previous episode. Um, right? Truffles gift box with flavors like smoked sea salt and triple espresso for your art-loving Secret Santa recipient. Um, the novel packaging is just as special as the chocolate. And again, this is from Alana Shu, not from the author, Ms. Casson. So I am personally confused about the way these things put together. The spring and mulberry. So bar lovers, spring and mulberry. I believe. Let me. Um, oh, nope. So this is an interesting thing to understand, which is that um, sorry. um, that these appear to be some sort of affiliate link, or there's skim resource. There's some sort of keeping track of what you're doing for some sort of um, some sort of referral fees that might be paid to Bon Appetit without actually mentioning that this is what's happening. Not entirely sure. What I think that if you're going to be doing affiliate links, it makes an enormous amount of sense to let people know that if you click on any of the links and you purchase anything, that a portion of the price gets paid to the editorial team. So Raka, so I mean, this presentation really a gifting presentation? So these are the best chocolate gifts for 2025. I don't think this bag is a gifting presentation, so I'm sort of curious. Williams Sonoma peppermint bark. If you love peppermint bark, this is not a bad choice. Um, the only question is, should you order 1, 2, or 3 pounds? And Hue is owned by Mondelez, right? And so, from a sourcing collection, this is not mindfully sourced, right? So, Mondelez is been a party to a lawsuit about illegal labor in West Africa, and so I'm not a huge fan of Hue as a brand because of who they're owned for their parents. I've had a lot of their chocolates. It's not particularly high end as far as I'm concerned. And you shouldn't be one of their fair trade organic. That might be why you'd want to go about doing this. But this is not. I wonder why this is on the list. With Compartes and the other companies that have been on there, because I don't get it. But what this might talk about, perhaps more directly, is that the um, the audience for Bon Appetit magazine is very different from the audience of the New York Times magazine or the New York Times, and specifically Wirecutter and who they're trying to reach. And it may be that the audience for Bon Appetit is broader. They have a different editorial selection. But if we're talking about holiday gifting, and I mean, I would take this beautiful bar from Spring and Mulberry rather than this packaging. I mean, I could see doing this as maybe, if I've got something that I want to put in a stocking, I might do that. Um, it's like this peppermint bark is something that I might think of as doing as a gift for the table, not necessarily for an individual gift. Hue would not be on my list. I mean, Beyond Good is a great brand, but I still wonder why it's on this list as one of the best chocolate gifts. A, if I was buying single origin craft chocolate, this is not a craft chocolate. And the chocolate for Beyond Good is, well, they talk about their micro batch collection. So this particular set might be, right. But in general, I wonder why this is in the list and how it comes up. And then Tony's Chocolonely is a complete outlier here. Although it's, a $10 box, a $32 box, Tony's Chocolonely, while I've covered Tony's on many, many occasions, and I wonder why it's on the list. And the reason why I believe is that the Bon Appetit, um, right, so we got a fudge brownie mix, is they're dealing with an entirely different audience here. And so just I wanted to go and do that. But the selection here doesn't actually give you any kind of information about why you might want to buy. I mean, you would need to go and, oh, how are you going to determine who the audience for each one of these things is? And I think that's important to know. And it's something that I try to think about when I do my ratings and I do my reviews, is who's the audience for this? If I'm going to be doing a review of some chocolate, I try to scope my review to who I think the audience for the chocolate is. I'm going to judge a single origin, 2 ingredient bar from a small batch maker in Ecuador. I'm going to put a different editorial mindset, right? I'm going to write from a different editorial mindset than if I'm doing something which I can go into my local big box store and purchase in large quantities. So it's really, really important to know who it is. There are some overlaps. I did a little bit of look. All right. So this list has the widest price range. Its value is tied to packaging, mission, trendiness, right? And so I tried to do a little bit of of analysis on who the audience for each of these lists are. Finally, we're going to take a look at the list from Serious Eats. I was at one point a writer for Serious Eats many, many years ago. I want to think about maybe 15 or 20. So life handed us 28 boxes of chocolates. We found the best ones for gifting or keeping for yourself. So we've got a couple of authors here, and we can go down to the bottom of the page, and they actually have why we are the experts. So Grace Kelly is an editor. She tested kitchen equipment for America's Test Kitchen. She's worked as a journalist, has worked as a cook and a bartender. She's written dozens of reviews. She's reviewed kitchen equipment, and they interviewed someone. She's reviewed air fryers and uni ovens. There's not a whole lot of background in chocolate per se, specifically, but right, go find out where people are writing from. This will give you an indication of perhaps what some of their biases are. But one of the things that I do like about the way Serious Eats put this together is they really do talk about their process, right? So they talk about what were their tests. So they looked at their packaging, they did a taste test. All right, so you can learn how they approach doing this. So the packaging is an important part of the way they thought about this because it is a gifting guide. And again, this one was published in February, but it does provide year-round gifting options, not necessarily just for the holidays. I didn't find a whole lot of holiday-specific gifting lists. All right. So what we learned, a good box of chocolate should be well crafted and balanced. Okay. So they came in all shapes, sizes, flavors. The so-so chocolates from the great ones, delicacy and balance. So this is a criterion. They were looking for delicacy and balance as a part of their criterion for determining, or part of their criteria for taking a look at their tastes. So that's what that. Another thing is the interplay of the chocolate with the flavors inside. This is part of balance, right? You have the chocolate on the outside, the flavoring on the inside, and the question is, what is the balance between those two things? So we find, as I was working on my own rating system, when I first started out as a critic, this is back in 2000, 2001, I said, oh, there's a Northern European style, which is lighter and sweeter. It tends to be less about the chocolate, a lot of milk chocolate, but the flavors are clear and identifiable. Then you have a Southern European chocolate. It tends to be chocolate forward. Sometimes the flavorings are subtle, especially if it's French, subtle to the point of like, what am I eating? But the difference between Northern European and Southern European might be the difference between a cappuccino and an espresso. Might be a way to think about that. You have an American style, which is all about the flavoring. So, if you've got a raspberry flavoring, it's going to be all about the raspberry and not so much about the chocolate. And then you have a Nouvelle American or Nouvelle French, which balances the differences between that Southern European and American style chocolate making, where the chocolate is in your mouth and the flavor of the filling, which is identifiable, right? And then you have the flavor of chocolate again. So this is the good thing that the Serious Eats team is telling us about the way they're going about um, reviewing their chocolate. That's a good thing. So Michael Klug, who's the head chocolatier of L.A. Burdick. L.A. Burdick, been around forever. I've met Larry and his wife. I even saw Larry when I was in Grenada in 2010. Says the hand forming the chocolates can help achieve a delicate outer layer. When you use a chocolate mold, you always have a little bit of a thicker coating, and that plays a little bit against the mouthfeel. This is completely incorrect. I mean, if you go take a look at the work of people like Melissa Koppel or Melissa Koppel and Susanna Yoon of Stick With Me, you'll notice that they're doing, shatteringly thin shells, right? And their technique and their mastery of technique is such that they can replicate this over. So it's not necessarily true that hand dipped confections, C's are hand dipped, and their outer shells are often very, very thick and they're not very consistent. So here's a place where the expert advice, in my opinion, plays to what it is that Burdick produces, all right, but de-emphasizes or downplays characteristics of other makers. It's not as straightforward as they say, as Mr. Klug um, does mention here. One of the things I do like about this is that they do talk about shelf life. With that in mind, if you're planning on gifting someone who loves chocolate a fancy box of bonbons, it's best to order them about a week before giving them. Yes, cut it close, right? Don't store it in the refrigerator. Don't taste chocolate cold. I agree with that. And then, of course, this notion there really is something for everyone, 28 chocolate boxes. Let's go through. So they also said that flavor pamphlets were were very, very useful, which I agree. If you're making a box of bonbons and you don't provide a printed guide to what it is inside, your buyers are going to be confused. And if they do have any kind of dietary concerns, allergens or things like that, it really could put them at risk. So just a quick note to produce a guide. If it's not actually a printed guide in the box, have a QR code where they can go to your website and very, very easily identify the flavors on the box by the decorations. Right? So really, really important to go about doing that. And then what to look for in a box of chocolates. Right? So variety, not cloyingly sweet, silky chocolates. Right? So you get a very, very quick understanding about here's how they are going to bias their interpretations. They're looking for things that are not overly sweet. They're looking for things that have good variety, may or may not be important for some people, right? But right, L.A. Burdick, everyday chocolate assortment, the best class box chocolates. This is a case where, we interviewed somebody from L.A. Burdick. We're going to have them be the first person on the list. Don't know if it's pay for play. I'm not making that assumption, but they're interviewing L.A. Burdick, somebody from L.A. Burdick. So the first recommendation is L.A. Burdick. Not a bad recommendation. They do really good work. Their pâte de fouille is wonderful. They're known for their chocolate mice and their chocolate penguins, and they're just really, really lovely. I mean, if you put a box of chocolate mice in front of a small child, or the penguins in front of a child, they're just like, everybody loves them. They're just really, really fun. They have a variation on that of chocolate snowmen, really well decorated, a lot of fun, a lot of whimsy. I could see using any of these as table decorations and things like that as well. So there's a lot of ways that these particular pieces from Burdick's can be used, although you may want to give an assorted box if that's what you're doing. However, one thing to know is that although L.A. Burdick was founded in New York City and then moved to New Hampshire, they were sold, I want to say, at least a decade ago, if not more, like 15 years ago, to a Korean conglomerate. So they're now not owned by Larry Burdick anymore and the family. So the key specs varies, the numbers of chocolates vary, sample flavors. So they give you some interesting ideas about what are in them, but they they don't have as with the Bon Appetit, uh, um, the Bon Appetit reviews, they really don't have a consistent rubric about the way they talk about what they're doing, and so it requires there's no easy, oh, who are these for, right? What's great about these. There's no straightforward, um, consistent way of going and looking and seeing what the reviews are, right? Which is to say that if you're looking at guides from the ones like Bon Appetit or Serious Eats, they require more work in order to deconstruct and understand what it is that you want to do. That lack of a consistent rubric makes them a little bit more challenging. So, La Maison de Chocolat, I mean, a great name, one of the story names, Robert Lanx, one of the masters of ganache in the history of bonbon making. I had the great good fortune of being able to sit in on a class in New York City that he taught in the late 2000s, no, 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere around in there, before he passed away. I've been to the flagship store in Paris. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to have a product from an overseas vendor, go and go where they are. So if you want to eat La Maison de Chocolat, in my opinion, go to Paris. Um, don't go to one of their retail stores in New York City. Don't buy a box and have it shipped. Go and visit them. If you can purchase it on Amazon, um, and you're doing, gifting, this is for me a downscale move, a down market move for what you're doing. Um, but they are beautiful. And there's no doubt whatsoever. Guido Gubino, again, at Amazon. I love Guido Gubino. I mean, he's a fabulous person. And this particular collection has one of my favorite cremino that he makes. It's an olive oil and sea salt. I would go to Bar and Cocoa, and if I'm going to purchase this, I would get it from Bar and Cocoa. None of these is ganaches. These are all janduyas. These are all nut pastes in various forms, but this olive oil and sea salt cremino is absolutely amazing. They do some single origins as well from Mexico and go in there. So this box is heavy on Gianduja chocolates, says Ridley. So the authors of this are at the bottom. And so we don't know who Ridley is at this point. We don't know that Ridley is a contributor to the article. And we won't know that until we get to the end. So for me, it was like um, it was jarring to um, jarring to run across this name without knowing his relationship to the project. So um, Andre's Assorted Candies, Kansas City. Um, so again, um, so in some in some of these there is a quote, and in some of these there is not. And that lack of consistency and understanding what is editorial as opposed to what is quoted and who is writing what is lacking here. Again, right? This is a personal, idiosyncrasy for me, and the consistency or the lack of consistency, ends up being a challenge. Fritz Knipschild, unfortunately, you can buy these at Amazon and Williams Sonoma, or if you're in the Norwalk, Connecticut area, you may be able to buy them at retail directly from him. He's a great guy, great marketer, does really, really good work, and I can't say enough about it. Dandelion. So again, I'm not going to go into every single one of these offerings, but what you'll do is you'll notice that for the most part, in this Serious Eats collection, there's nothing so far that I would consider to be mass market, right? So we have Richard, which was also in the New York Times, the Wirecutter list. French, again, I would go to the Richard store, which is on, well, I know there's one on the Boulevard Saint-Germain because I've been in it. At least I was before COVID. I would go there. There was a Richard store in New York City for a while. I don't know if it's there anymore. I'm sort of confused about why there's a dandelion entry up here and there's a dandelion entry up here. and then we jump over and there's another dandelion entry. It's just an editorial thing. I noticed that because I produce web page content and organizing things. Bixby in Maine, they do, Kate, I believe her name, it does really, really wonderful, wonderful work as well. And so these, for the most part, are high-end products or things that are marketed as high-end products, as opposed to the list from Bon Appetit, which included Tony's Chocolonely, which was marketed at a much at a very, very different audience and very different, um, very, very different price points and very different buyers. Um, what's also interesting about this, and you may want to consider, and this is one of the reasons why I showed three, is take a look at, go through and take a look at the overlaps. So you have three different lists and what names, or at least the companies, appear on all three lists. So there is this, um, I think, if you have three very different editorial sources that appear to be recommending the same or similar products from the same makers across all three lists, that says this is something you might want to consider. You don't need to go in depth, in terms of understanding what exactly the collections offer, but understanding that there are overlaps in what it is that is being offered. So understand their overlaps in the companies that are mentioned, right? Might say, oh, well, I see that Valerie Confections is on two of the three lists, and I see that Compartis is on one of the lists, and I see that Dandelion is on all three lists, and maybe that La Maison de Chocolat is on one of the lists, and Richard, or La Maison is on two of the lists, and Richard's on two. You get an idea that, oh, I can filter out the ones that appear on only one list that appear to be aimed at mass market, unless that's exactly who you're buying a gift for. And you may be a little bit more price sensitive, and for some reason, availability on Amazon in terms of delivery is an important aspect of what you're doing. But going across multiple lists, and then being able to identify which companies are on all three lists and which products are on all three lists, is a good way to go help you understand. And by the way, this is something that an LLM, something like ChatGPT or Gemini, can help you do, right? You can point to these three pages and you can say, create a summary of, all the companies that appear on all three lists, or just on two lists and one list. And then if prices are mentioned, organized by prices, you can do that. And very, very quickly, right? Maybe it sounds like a cheat. I think it's one of the great applications of AI and LLMs to do this kind of summarization for data heavy, which requires a lot of scrolling in order to figure out what's going on. But, Melissa Koppel is on this list from Serious Eats. I don't, and another thing to do is, oh my gosh, I mean, if you don't know Sokola or you don't know some of these other companies, you've got brand new names that you've never heard of before, which is another one to go through these lists. Another reason to go through these lists is you may find that there are companies you've never heard of before, and you may want to give them a try. And that's one of the things that I love about these lists, is that's what I look them for. Vosges, right? Tavernier, again, another small maker, whose work I can recommend. Ethylam is on this list. So this is where I wonder sometimes. Ethylam is owned by Mars. Now, it was originally set up as an independent company, but it was bought by the Mars family. So I'm looking at this Ethylam thing, and I'm going, I know what Mars confections are all about. I've been to the Ethylam store the factory is in Las Vegas, last I saw. I've been to the Ethylam store at the airport in Las Vegas, and this might be great for a Valentine's Day collection if you're looking for something compared with someone else. But this seems to be an out of place with respect to the brands that are other brands that are on this list. I don't know Coho, right? And I would be interested in going and try them. The Milk Bar, right? Well, okay, these aren't technically chocolates. They're bonbons of a kind, like fudgy brownies. This is the best chocolate boxes. And so I don't necessarily think that, saying we need to apologize for this not being bonbons, right? This is a box of chocolate confections. Maybe they're baked confections, right? But they, again, I don't know what they have to apologize for, why they are apologizing for them. And then there's a list of other companies that didn't make their list and have photographs associated with their entries. But nuts.com, I mean, nuts.com for me is, you know, up there with the FLM thing. I mean, if I'm looking for something which is, I would think, cheap and cheerful, then going online, because, you know, who made them? Where are they made? Are they made by nuts.com? Are they made for nuts.com? Right? I don't understand why that's competition. I don't know Sheila Carnes. I do know Ginger Elizabeth. She does fabulous work. She's in the Sacramento area. Ginger and her husband joined me in 2010 on a trip to Belize. She does great work, and I can't recommend her work more highly. And I'm kind of wondering why she's not on this upper list compared with, why FLM is on here and Ginger Elizabeth is not, because it's much more, in my opinion, it would make more sense to change those two, change those position. I don't know Truffulo, Journey to Piedmont Truffle Box. Never heard of Truffulo, but that's one of the reasons why I like these lists, because I find names of companies that I've never heard of, and I will go through and I will find all these companies and I will add them to my database of makers. So if I go someplace, I find out where they are, and if I go to a place, I can go and look them up. Louis Sherry, I mean, it's an old school name, but FAQs, right? So here's what I do like about Serious Eats. Let's go to the top. What I do like about Serious Eats is they talk about how they go about making the selections that they make, right? They talk about how they do it, right? What they learned. They give overall guidance, and you can use this guidance from Serious Eats to help you make decisions about what you might want to purchase from, right? Maybe the Wirecutter article. These are not mutually exclusive lists. You can learn from each of them something which will help you make a decision in terms of buying a box of chocolates. Because who doesn't love a box of good chocolates for as a gift for any time of year, not just necessarily for the holidays, right? But hopefully, what you've got from this episode is an understanding of how to go and read these lists. That's what it is that I wanted to really emphasize. I have my personal preferences about wondering why some brands are on some lists that seem to be out of place. But what I really wanted to emphasize is how you go through the list and how you use the information that they present to help you make better informed decisions about the chocolates you're going to gift to other people, or maybe the chocolates you're going to be gifting for yourself. And with that, we've come to today's episode. I do want to remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. You can go to the Chocolate Life, click on the join button, right? And there's always a free membership tier. But if you do have the resources to support the work that we do here, there are monthly and annual memberships. And the annual memberships at the higher level include, include coaching and consulting hours, up to 3 hours per year. So I apologize for the navigation. I'm using a different window than I often do, and I'm not entirely comfortable with how it all works in terms of displaying those things. But with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me today on this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, and to wish everybody the best holiday season that they can have. I hope it brings you everything that you wanted to be, visiting family and friends. If you're on your own, a chance to reach out and go speak with people. I'm going to be back here on Friday, the 26th, Boxing Day. And I'm going to be having the first of a two-part series, one of which is the first one on Friday, the 26th, is looking back at 2024 or 2025 And then the next episode is looking forward to 2026. And I hope you join me for both of those. But until then, thanks everybody. And remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Till the next time, everybody, ciao.